I grew up in Seattle in the 80s and 90s at the peak of busing to integrate schools. I was bused from Inner Bay to Kimball Elementary on Beacon Hill, and later from West Seattle to Garfield in the CD. When I tell people that, they sometimes assume a solidarity with me, and they'll go, "That must have been hard." And the schools. And that whole thing didn't even really work, did it? And I take a breath and I say, "Are you kidding me?" It nurtured my humanity. And not only that, but A, my grandfather helped implement that, so screw you. B, in America, this is the only era when we have taken a dent out of the achievement gap significantly. And third, you know this accepting, open-minded, empathetic city you enjoy so much? Those traits are fading the further we get away from that era. I love Seattle. It is my soul. Seattle schools are Seattle. And that worries me right now because Seattle schools, like schools across the nation, are resegregating. It's not just the data that bear that out, but my own personal experience. I worked at Global Connections High School in Seattleites for 9 years, an incredible school filled with world citizens. And in my time there, the student body dramatically changed. We not only got more kids, we had more students of color, more kids living in poverty, more kids with special needs, and more English language learners. None of those things are flaws, but they were challenges on a system that was already stressed. The expectations increased, the resources decreased, and I needed a break or I was going to burn out. So now I teach at Catherine Blaine K-8, a wonderful school filled with wonderful kids in Magnolia. I have my own classroom. There's 3 copy machines. Now during that same time period, a very interesting thing happened there. The students on free and reduced lunch, which is how we measure poverty, was cut almost in half. I am not blaming either school, but resegregation is happening. And there are dangerous consequences to the spirit of Seattle. The first one is that we are accepting separate but equal. And we know from Brown versus Board that separate cannot be equal. Right now we have winner schools and we have loser schools. And we'll say, winners, you're good. We're not going to worry about you. Loser schools, we got resources. We're going to try things. We're going to fix you. We've got some theories. And sometimes they work. They usually don't, and not for very long. But we feel good. But it's not a resource issue. It's a race, class, and privilege issue that we're implicated in if we don't talk about it. But the other consequence is even worse, which is complete and utter isolation. The students at Global and Blaine are incredible, and they don't know how the other half lives. You don't need to pay for exchange programs to Spain anymore. Go 25 minutes up or down I-5, and you are in a whole new world. Now, the danger is without those students interacting, there's no constructive tension. Those who come from privilege have no impetus to act because they don't know how bad it is. And those who are in a challenging situation, that is their ecosystem. They live it, they breathe it. They often don't know there's another way, or even worse, they deserve what they're getting. Now, I know Seattle is an empathetic, culturally flexible place. And I want to preserve that. But in a time of resegregation, how do we do that? I believe it's through discomfort. We must be more uncomfortable. Schools can do 3 things to provide some discomfort. First, we should evaluate schools beyond just test scores. I want schools to graduate activists, collaborators, not just folks who are smart but good. And I think the Seattle Times profile on Foster is an example of that. Secondly, I think we should have groups of teachers from very different kinds of schools collaborate, do PD, visit each other's classrooms, make sure that it's not just my students but our students, and advocate for the system as a whole. You could even make it where teachers work 3 years at one school, 3 years at another to just continue advocating and sharpening their skills. Lastly, I think students should collaborate across schools in writing projects, which I'm looking at right now with WITS, where, as mentioned earlier, you tell another story in the first person to create radical empathy, which can result in real change. I believe that Seattle schools and its students and its staff can inspire and empower each of us to not only be smart, but good, not only peaceful, but just, and not just individuals, but compassionate members of a beloved community. Thank you.
Good job. Perfect.